Hey everyone, this is Mayan Gordon, owner of Mayan Gordon Media. We are back live at 5, and today I have a very special guest for you guys. His name is Justin Shoup, and I actually met Justin quite a while back now. I think he was one of the first 1,000 people that I connected with. Could have even been like in the first 200. And Justin's a really amazing guy. I'm going to go ahead. Justin, could you introduce yourself to people? Tell people kind of what you do now, and also who are you as a person? What kind of defines you?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll try. So my background is in sales. Recently, I've been consulting for some small sales teams, helping them with their growth. Currently in negotiations to run sales for a new app that I'm really excited about. So hopefully in the next week or so, I'll be able to have some more info on that. But I'm just, at the point in my life where I'm all about trying to connect with other people who are really focused on just trying to have a positive impact on the world. I think that's kind of how we started to connect, was just, having a similar mission of just trying to help other people continue to grow, have a positive impact, whether it's personally, professionally, or in our communities. And so that's kind of what I'm all about.
Yeah, absolutely. And to give people context, we connected over a nonprofit called the Young Investors Society, and we'll talk a little bit about that, I think, later on. But, I think it always helps people to know, like, where did you come from? Where did you grow up? Kind of what was your life like that allowed you, and probably, had a journey that allowed you to be in this place where you are able to not only be thinking about the well-being of others, but it's something that you're passionate about.
Yeah, so I grew up in Michigan. I was born in Tennessee, but don't have any memory of it. Grew up in Michigan with a single mom. Moved around a ton. I think I lived in 10 different houses before I was 10. Yeah, not as impressive as like the 30 under 30 list, right? But it just lets you know, like, I, from a young age, learned that, I had to adapt and go with the flow. And then I was fortunate enough to move around. Like, I spent the majority of my childhood in Michigan, never traveled. We didn't go on vacations or anything. And then I started as a teacher at Nature's Classroom, which is on the East Coast, like 10 different states on the East Coast. And they focus on experiential learning. So they'll teach like 60% science. You might teach a lesson on physics, and then you'll go outside and actually like launch water rockets. So really cool hands-on stuff. And from there, teaching I had off. So I started working at camps as a counselor. Got to meet some really phenomenal families and people. And from there, it's just kind of one thing's always led to another. And I've traveled the world. I think, I've been to over 30 or 40 countries now, which the first time I left Michigan, I was 18, I went to Canada. And since then, it's been 2, 3, 4 countries every year. And I've just really fallen in love with like getting to know different cultures, different people, the experiences that you have. And it's just been a huge blessing to me to get to have those experiences and kind of the connections that you make, because everyone has such an incredible journey and story. And, what I've been able to take away from that and put in my professional experience with sales has been, such a blessing.
Yeah, well, let's talk a little bit about that, because I think that's a fascinating concept, and I couldn't agree more. I haven't been fortunate enough to travel to that many countries, but I have been to Mexico and Israel, and a couple other places kind of in between, some long layovers. And I think that when you travel, it really opens up your brain into a different set of functionality than when you're in your normal environment, and you're kind of forced to think in a different way than you would when you're in your comfort zone, so to speak.
Yeah.
So could you speak a little to that? Like, what are some specific things you've taken back with you from your travels that have applied like very directly into your work life?
Yeah, I mean, one of my first experiences, I actually accepted a position as a personal assistant for a family. I was splitting time between Singapore and Miami, and we were actually in Italy. And I didn't have my phone plan set up for international travel, and I had to get a document signed into DHL in a part of Italy I had never been. I didn't know where I was at. and it just was a really great experience because I was outside my comfort zone. I had to pivot. I had to figure things out really quickly. And I think when you're traveling and, whether it's for business or pleasure, sometimes we can't always have everything laid out exactly how we would in the office. Right. So it really just forces you to, think on your feet and just figure it out, or ask for help also, which I think is such an important thing. Is there's going to be a lot of times where we might have the pride, or we want to figure it out. We want to be the ones to do it, but it's just, there's no reason not to ask for help. So I think for me, traveling is one of those things where when you don't speak the language, you got to figure it out. You got to ask somebody for help. And it's, something that's so relevant in our professional careers. And those relationships, I have people where, I'll travel, or I'll have a friend who's going, I'll see somebody posting that, they're going offline, they're traveling, and I'll connect them with somebody I met 5-10 years ago. And, I've seen them connect, and it's just been a great experience. And it's, I can't recommend it enough. And it's not easy, right? It's getting to the point where you travel that much. It's been a priority, and it's, what are we willing to not have here, whether it's a new car or a nicer house, because traveling for us is a priority for my family,
Yeah, no, that's amazing. I love the point that you made about, I think traveling turns you into a problem solver, and into a better problem solver, because if you want to have the experience that you're looking to have, you oftentimes have to, you're forced to overcome problems that you couldn't have predicted. Like whenever you're planning for a trip, you plan for certain things, you bring certain tools with you that you hope are going to help you solve problems, but inevitably, because you just don't have enough awareness of what could possibly happen, something comes up that you didn't expect, and then you're thrown into this realm of either like, I can quit on my trip, or I can figure out a solution to this problem. And I love that kind of like back against the wall type of situation that travel really puts you into, whether that's having to like literally run in the airport to catch your next flight because the one plane got delayed, and the next plane isn't going to wait for you, or whether that's, like you said, not knowing even just how to get somewhere, and being forced to ask someone, even if you're uncomfortable talking to strangers. And I know that for me, one of the things that helped me just be better with people, which I think is probably something that ties so directly into sales. Like in sales, you have to be really comfortable talking to people. That's a baseline thing that you need. And if a lot of people grow up under circumstances where they're not that comfortable talking to strangers. And in a different country, there's, I think, two scenarios that assist with that. One is you need the information and you simply can't get it any other way. And then two, you also know that you probably never see that person again. So like if you kind of look like an idiot or feel like an idiot, you get to walk away, and it just doesn't really matter the same way that even if you did talk to a stranger in your hometown, it might still be true that you never see them again, but you feel like, oh, but they live here. Like, what if they see me again? They might tell all my friends, like all these crazy thoughts that we have in our head. So could you talk a little bit more about like, how are you able to make so much travel happen? Because I'm sure there's some people watching and they're thinking like, oh, this guy must be rich. Like he gets to travel, all over the world. Like I can't do that because I don't have enough money. And I've seen time and time again that people can travel on any budget. Like no matter how much money you have, you can make travel work. So could you talk a little bit about the financial aspects of it and how you've been able to make it work?
Yeah, I mean, we're fortunate enough to live in a time, right, where it's never been more affordable to travel. And for somebody who grew up, again, like with a single mom, we didn't go. I have one memory of a vacation going as a kid. We drove in a car down to Gulf Shores, Alabama. It was like 30 hours of driving from Michigan. We slept in the car. It's like that was the only trip we ever took, right? So I didn't grow up with that. And so for me, I always thought traveling was for rich people. Because it's just, I didn't know it. We saw it on TV, Home Alone, right? They go on a family vacation and they live in this amazing house, and it was only for rich people. So, but thankfully as an adult, when I started working at Nature's Classroom, a lot of other people who were there had spent time overseas and traveled, and it was right next to a YMCA camp, which had a lot of international staff. And it was wild. I mean, my first trip internationally was to Australia, and I booked a 3-month trip, and I think it was $900 round trip, which I had been saving up for. But it's just one of those things where if you don't, basically as an adult, right, the best way to save money is don't go out to eat. Cook your own food.
Yes.
If you do that, that's alone, right? Don't go to Starbucks, right?
Yeah.
That alone can pay for 1 trip.
Yeah.
And the other ways is I found when you go to trips, right? Like I don't go to go lay on a beach and spend a ton of money. Every once in a while we'll go to a nice restaurant, but trying to actually get out and explore, Peru, we went and we did a lot of hiking, but another really good way is couch surfing, right? There's websites, there's apps, there's people who need help around the farm or the house or whatever it might be. So especially when I was younger, I always looked at those types of opportunities because it's just it can be outside of your flights. You can do it really on a tight budget if you need.
Yeah, and to that point, my cousin Nitai, he grew up in Israel. In Israel, they're conscripted into the army. Like they all have to do army service when they turn 18. He had an amazing army experience, but went through some stuff, and afterwards just wanted to travel the world. Didn't take any money, and literally just every country he went to would find a job. And, a lot of these people are so kind all over the world. So, he would find a job working part-time and they'd offer to give him free room and board with the job. So he would be, he'd have his place to stay. He got meals for free and he was making money at the same time. So if you think like, I don't have any money to be able to afford a vacation, if you can get somewhere, you can make it work as long as you're willing to, be outgoing, to ask around and to find and take advantage of those opportunities. Absolutely. So yeah, go ahead.
Technically my first sales job, I wasn't even employed by the company. I was in Australia. I was staying in a hostel, and some of the other guys who were staying in that hostel worked on a boat where they were doing scuba diving, and I made friends, and they worked out a deal. So they got me to go for free one day. And the only thing I had to do was I had to try and help get the other tourists to buy more photos, because that's how they make a lot of the money. They have the photographer underwater. And so I went, and every chance I was next to somebody I didn't know, I was like, man, these photos were so good. My family back home loves it. And so I didn't even realize that like this was kind of my entry into sales. And it was just traveling and helping other travelers out, and I still talk to a few of the guys going on 12 years later.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I love that point. It's if you can make a couple friends and share your story with them, it's very likely that random opportunities are going to come your way, or that those people are going to be willing to help you out towards whatever your goals might be, because there's just a different feeling of friendship when you're all together in a foreign country, or when you're all kind of staying in a hostel or traveling together. It's a totally different type of relationship than you would form in terms of friendship back at home. And so I think it's a really wonderful, special thing to experience, and it makes so much sense to me that you guys would keep in touch years and years later. So what did that lead into? Like, when did you get into more of, let's say, traditional sales jobs, and kind of what pushed you into a particular sector of sales? Like, I know that you work and try to work with a lot of, cause and mission driven companies. Where did that come from?
Yeah, so sales was actually, I just fell into it. I was in Wilmette, which is just north of Chicago. I was working as a personal assistant for just a phenomenal woman up there, and she was taking time to spend more time with family. So my contract was coming up to an end, and I talked to one of my friends. I texted him because his brother was in Chicago. He's a surgeon. And I was just looking for recommendations for restaurants, and he texted back and he was like, I just moved to Chicago, and he was working for a company in sales. It was called LiveWatch at the time. It was home security, right? Like something no one ever thinks of, because no one cares about it unless you have to have it or you work in that industry. But it makes sense that it's a huge industry, right? And LiveWatch was an up and coming player. They were the only ones who they're doing at the time was unheard of. It was called Cancel Anytime, right? Home security was one of those industries where
Contract based.
they lock you
Yeah.
into these crazy contracts. You have 3 days, right? Everyone's
Yeah.
sort of, ADT, which is a great solution for some people, but for a lot of people that they try and sign up, having a 3-day window, it's like, are you really confident in the service you have if you're locking somebody in for a 3-year term and giving 3 days? Like, come on. And so they caught my eye, and they were still very much startup. I remember when I got hired on, there's times where I was going to CVS to buy K-cups and toilet paper, and but it was also such a good learning experience because they brought salespeople into the marketing meetings. I got to go and actually see the operations team in Kansas where everything got shipped out of, and it was really, for me, such a good experience to learn all of the different areas of a business. And the CEO.
That's fascinating. Let me ask you about that real quick. So how much, because I think that is pretty unique. I know that my husband Ben one time had a sales job working at a car dealership. And it's really, I think a lot of sales and a lot of companies work this way. The salespeople only do sales. Like, they pick up the phone, they call people, and they don't see any of the rest of how the company operates. How do you think that either helped you or impacted you in terms of like your ability to make sales?
So I think it was groundbreaking because I think of it as a sports team. We actually cared about the success and well-being of one another. Sales gets, a rap a lot of times of being cutthroat, but I think when you're fortunate enough to build a team that cares, or at least is somewhat invested in the other employees, not only in their division but the rest of the company, you're going to look out for one another. And here's the thing: if your employees care, the customer is going to be taken care of, which is what it all comes down to, right? So for me, that was one of the biggest things. I'm very competitive. I still play football and basketball, 2-3 times a week. I'm going to be like, I'm going to play until I can't anymore. But there's healthy competition. And for a sales team, if you're able to develop that, but to the point where they don't also forget that set the right expectations for the customer, they're going to call in, and the operations team, the retention team, they're not going to be happy. You can get rid of a lot of those issues right off the bat by having a team that cares and just realizes that. Because I think a lot of times it's, if they're not, if they don't see the work that's being put in the other areas, if they don't have those personal connections, they're not going to even, it's not going to be on their mind. But if you're able to have that there, then it's gonna go a long way.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I've seen that even just with my own businesses as they've evolved over time, that it's almost just a level of transparency that leads to a feeling of being a part of a team. It's not even sometimes, one person learning from another. It's just them seeing them there working and feeling like, oh, I'm not alone in my efforts, versus I think a lot of the more traditional sales roles where there's a big sense of feeling alone, of like, I have to hit these numbers. I have to do all this work. It doesn't matter what anyone else is doing because it's all on me to do this one thing. And when you just can see the other people all working, and that they're not working just for their own job, they're working for this company as a whole, you get that sense and that feeling too, just through observation. I think, bringing you into meetings, that's amazing because you probably got to ask direct questions and kind of be much more involved in that. But I think that every company could have a bigger level of transparency between the different employees that, like you said, directly affects how people then treat the customers. How you feel about your company is absolutely going to directly come out in terms of when you're talking to the customer. So I love you sharing that. Let's talk quickly about kind of the nonprofit side of the things that you do. How did you really start getting involved in that? And how do you make decisions about which nonprofits you're putting your energy and efforts to? There's so many great causes out there. How do you determine that?
Yeah, so the way I got into it is I was fortunate enough to have a great basketball coach in high school who, really encouraged and at times required, the players to do community service, to be actively involved in the community. He's one of the coaches who, if a player their parents couldn't afford to go to a camp, he'd come out of his pocket on a teacher's salary. But he also requires to work very hard and to also invest in the community. So that was kind of instilled on, early on. The way that I decide to get involved, because it's hard. There's so many charities out there. There's so many nonprofits out there doing great work, right? But a lot of them, I think, do tug at the heartstrings. Some of them, I mean, Mark Cuban's a great example. He says he'll cover, somebody's salary, or he'll pay for infrastructure or something, but he doesn't often just write a check for a charity, because some of them have a lot of overhead or, inflated salaries. And I look for overall impact too. It's tough because there's so many people who need stuff, but for me, I want to find something that is going to eventually have a greater impact. So Young Investor Society, for example, they're not just giving money to kids to invest. They're teaching them budget, credit profiles, how that affects your ability to get a loan. They do teach them about entrepreneurship. So they're giving them the tools themselves to end, the cycle that has been in those lower income communities. But then they also do have great programs like their $1 a day match, where they have the students who save $1 of their own money, and then they match it, and the students actually start investing for their future right then and there, because the sooner it's involved in, I think it's 2/3 of adults are financially illiterate. And it's not because they don't want to be, it's because they haven't given the education or the opportunity. And to have 90% of the students who go through that nonprofits program pass a financial literacy exam, it's like, why is this not required for every high school student to graduate? Like, it could easily be done.
Yeah, like let's replace the state history class with financial literacy. We'd all be so much better off. I don't think I used anything I learned in history class ever.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that history class is bad, right? But this is something that affects everyone, because when you have members of the community who don't know anything about personal finance, it's not just going to affect them. It's going to affect their kids, their loved ones, and it affects the small businesses, because if people don't have money to spend, it's going to hurt the small business. So for me, I just think of, like, they're in 550 schools now. If we could get that into every school, what would the impact be? Like, it's still amazing to me that companies like, who spend $1 billion a year on marketing, like, why don't they put 1% back into financial literacy?
So that people can spend more money on their company. Yeah, no, it's not even asking for charity at that point. It's really just common sense.
Really,
like, we should be doing this. Yeah, absolutely.
And so I look for that. What is the overall impact going to be? Not just to the immediate donations, immediate work, but like long term. And then I look for how can we make things right? How do we level playing fields that have just been, so another great one that I have started working with is wallstreetbound.org, and that's getting Black and brown young adults internships for firms on Wall Street, right? So you look at financial firms, law firms, areas where women and people of color have just been so drastically underrepresented. Just giving, because that's the other end, right? So we have the education, but then you can be educated, but if you're not given the opportunity, right? So for me, I look at how do we not only fill the pipeline, but then give them, the keys to the door and potentially, help get them a seat at the table. So that's why I want it to be not just one. I want to, try and focus on multiple organizations that are kind of dealing with those areas.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I love that. It kind of comes down to impact and opportunity, and they have to go hand in hand for them to both be maximally effective. So let's kind of wrap this up. I know you have a short time window, and really, really appreciate you, bringing your energy and your time to the table. I'm sure there's a lot of people out there who want to start getting involved in nonprofit work, but again, are maybe overwhelmed, don't know where to start. Let's say for someone who's never given money to or donated time to a nonprofit, like, where are some places just to start in terms of looking or in getting involved?
I mean, there's a lot. There's some companies out there who essentially like grade nonprofits to give people an idea. But for me, it's just like, I would look at what's a cause you care about, see who else cares about that. Right. So if you can find somebody else who cares about it, I mean, you can Google it, you can go on Instagram. because a lot of those people have done their homework. They find organizations who do well, but for me, if it's something you care about, right? Like take 5-10 hours over the course of a month, do research, learn about it, because there's a lot of options out there and some different philosophies and ways of working. But then you're better educated too. And then I think the second thing is that second step is talk to people about it, right? Like these are crazy times, but a lot of people are at home, they have extra time. Talk to your family, friends. Like this is the time to talk about causes that really matter. It's so easy to get stuck on Netflix or the news or spend time complaining or worrying. I think if you can just, whatever your bandwidth is, if it's, an hour, 5 hours, like educate yourself and then try and get others involved. Because
I love that.
When you have that community, no one feels as good as when they help somebody else who needs it, right? Like
absolutely.
So why not share that with friends when you find something you're passionate about? And that's what I've been all about, like is just trying to make connections. And I tell people if there's any way I can help what they're doing, even if it's another nonprofit that I personally haven't donated to, like I'm always willing to jump on a call or make a connection in their area if somebody in my network can help. And if we could all do more of that, I think we'd be in the right direction.
Yeah, no, I love that, because I think that speaks directly also to people who maybe feel like they don't have as much time to, let's say, go in and volunteer somewhere. It only takes 1 to 5 minutes in every conversation. Imagine if every conversation you had on Zoom, with business people, at the end you ask them, hey, are there any nonprofits that you're really passionate about? That was a 15-second question that, no matter what they say, you're going to get some benefit out of it. And also you're going to get them thinking about nonprofits more, about helping people out. And whether they say something, really conclusive to you in those couple seconds, in that minute, in those 5 minutes, you have no idea how long afterwards they might spend thinking about that, and then taking action towards it or speaking to other people about it. And I really believe in the power of conversation. I think that we've seen over the past 6 months how much change can be affected just by us having conversations about it. So just, if you're watching right now, remember that it's not just money, it's not just your time, it's really also conversation and talking about, what the good causes we all can do together that are going to make those causes come into effect and make them happen. So thank you so much. If people want to get in touch with you, what is the best way? Like maybe they want to pick your brain a little bit more about your sales work, about the nonprofits, or just get to know you better. How would they do that?
Yeah, just DM me on LinkedIn. I'm very responsive, so I think that's the easiest way.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for watching this. Make sure to tag someone in the comments who is either involved in nonprofits or you want them to watch this interview. I think there's a ton of value here. Let's all make sure that we get out and travel more, because it just connects us. Talking about connecting us, I think not right now, safely, when we're all back from COVID. I think, start making those travel plans now, though. If you've always wanted to travel and felt like you never could, now is the absolute best time to start planning that, start saving up some money. And I love seeing the world connect in a way that it never has before while we're distancing. Imagine what we can do once we all get back together. So thank you guys so much. I hope you had an amazing night, and we hope to see you again tomorrow.